Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are really happy to be providing this webinar and to be welcoming Jeremy Lurey. Before we get started, a couple things to note. We have some really great upcoming webinars, all of which will be at 7 o'clock, all of which, like this webinar, will be recorded and posted to our website. So on Wednesday, February 5th, we have a session called FEMA, SBA, and You with tremendous experts and guests that can answer all kinds of questions about anything FEMA, SBA related. On Thursday, February 14th, we have a session called Mental Health in Traumatic Times. Again, really fantastic experts, people that we're very, very excited that are going to be able to join us. And then on Wednesday, February 19th, Navigating Financial Decisions. That is a really important session about all the different things that we know so many of you are weighing at this time to assist with that really difficult process. If you are looking for any type of assistance at all, whether it is housing, whether it's mental health resources, no matter what it might be, please do email fireaid@ourki.org. That's OURKI.org. We have a lot of different resources that we've been pairing with people based on those requests, and our member engagement director is handling those. So please do email fireaid@ourki.org for those. And then lastly, before we get started, ourki.org/pallyfire is our page that has not only the recordings of these webinars, but also a tremendous amount of information and resources. We know part of the challenge right now is there's a flood of information that's constantly changing. So we're here to help slim that down to what's most important, most relevant in the moment, and provide that to our community. So with that, I'd like to throw it to our beloved Senior Rabbi, Amy Bernstein, to start us off this evening.
Thanks, Adam. I'm very happy that all of you are able to join us. I wish it were for any other reason than to do this particular webinar. I'm very happy, though, that Jeremy Lurey is with us tonight and willing to give of his time and expertise and experience and care and concern for us. Jeremy's been concerned for KI and its health and well-being for a long time. We've had the benefit of his executive coaching. We've had the benefit of his love and attention to ways that we could serve you better. And that meant looking at ourselves and how we're doing as an organization. He generously gave us that time and input from his talent and his years of helping people be their best. He's the son, of course, of our amazing Michael Lurey, former president of KI, very much a part of KI's long history in that family. And so he's ours. And we're just very, very grateful and very happy that he could come share his information with us, but also his experience and his story. For me, that's what's been really important, is not only hearing from people who have good information. That's really important for all of us, but in some ways just as important, maybe sometimes more important, are people who get it. They're giving you information, but they've also walked the path. They've been where we are, they get what we're experiencing, and they understand at deep levels what information can be overwhelming, what information is useful in one moment and it might not be in another. And so they get the overwhelm of us trying to decide what information is pertinent right now and what can wait till later, and we have no idea. So Jeremy, thank you, welcome. I'm gonna ask that we say the bracha before anything we do at KI, before any meeting, anything of that we do. We say a bracha that is about the commandment to engage with the needs of the community. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'tzorchei tzibor. Blessed are you, Spirit of the universe, who makes us holy with your mitzvot, one of which is to truly take seriously, engage with, and do what we can as regards the needs of the community. Jeremy.
Amen. Thank you for that. So do I get to share a couple of things and then you're going to jump into some questions?
Yeah.
So let me start with two things briefly. One, I saw some of the materials that went out for the promotions about this event and appreciate everyone's being here and just joining the conversation. I want to start with being very clear. We did not lose our home. So for those of you who have a total loss, not only am I sorry for you, but I can't tell that part of the story. What I can tell is what happens when you evacuate your home and you don't get to go back for 365 days, given the extent of smoke damage and other challenges with the property. So just to be clear, for those of you who have a total loss, again, horribly, horribly devastating. Can only imagine knowing that the home you want to go back to is gone and what that rebuilding experience will be for you. But what I can share, and what many of you have seen in the What I Wish I Knew sort of lift that my wife Monica had prepared after our Woolsey experience, is that restoration, sort of the repair process, not so much the rebuilding. And second, honestly, I am so humbled to be here. I'm here for you. I'm not here for me. I'm here for you. I'm looking at the people who are attending tonight, and some of you have known me for my entire life. Some of you know me going back to the Early Childhood Center, AKI, which looked very different when I was there 50 years ago. Some of you probably didn't change my diapers looking at the names of who is attending here. So thank you for letting me share our story. This is Monica's story and my story and my broader family. We were affected by the Woolsey fire. For those of you who know the west end of Malibu, my backyard sits on Keenan Road. You get to my front door more off of Pacific Coast Highway. But you know, we are a hillside property at the bottom of Keenan. Before November of 2018, I would have told you I have the best property in Malibu because we're protected by all the homes around us. Although there are signs at the bottom of Keenan that talk about a tsunami zone, I don't expect a wave to ever come over Zuma Beach and pass my home. But as all of you know, who lived around the ABC streets in the Village or the Palisades Highlands, having homes around you does not necessarily protect you from the wildfire in the brush. And it is devastating what's happened now to, you know, our community again. So if anyone has any questions about where you're at today, please feel free to share them. We will monitor the chat and the Q&A panel, but just use this time for wherever you're at in the journey. So with that as my background, let me just share a few things that we went through. And I hope this is relevant to those of you who are at different stages in this process. From the beginning of going to the Disaster Relief Center and figuring out what resources are there and what do you need to do, to potentially applying for an SBA loan if you're going to be building and why that's advantageous to you, to just the record keeping you want to do. Because unfortunately, and I'm sorry to say, dealing with your insurance carrier is not going to be fun. It is not going to be easy. It will be tremendously effortful. And so just being organized with all that can benefit you and your family going through this process. So for us, as I said, we were evacuated from Woolsey fire. We were out of our home for 13 days in this community before we were allowed back in to see what was standing. Like many of you, looking at, you know, news reports as often as we could get news reporters in our area. We had friends who were helicopter pilots from LA City or County Fire, and so just doing everything we could in that period of time. When we came back on day 14, I will just offer, it took an entire month before we got a first sort of, I will call, attempt from our insurance company. And for those of you who are starting to get back into area or trying to work with your insurance adjusters initially, our insurance adjuster field agent was from Wisconsin, and nothing against Wisconsin. My favorite people and clients are from Wisconsin, but being from Wisconsin and driving for 20, 30 hours to get here during a natural catastrophe like this does not make you prepared to evaluate what happened to a hillside home. And for those of you who lived up Lockman, Bienvenida, places like that where you are in a hillside, for those of you who are in areas where your home is still standing, but none of your neighbors are, I am sorry to say what we thought was going to be 3 months turned into 12. And the reason for that, we had a tile shingle roof. I would imagine many of you have or had tile shingle roof. Well, our insurance adjuster said, we will power wash that and then you'll be able to get back into your home. All it took was our contractor to say, so you are telling me you are going to literally negate the lifetime warranty on this roof to power wash those tiles. And it was at that point the insurance company said, oh, I guess you need a new roof. There's no way any of your homes that are still standing going through that heat, that smoke, that soot, you're going to be able to power wash your roof and just have it be clean. All of those materials that you're breathing are in the bottom of those tiles. You power wash the top. I'm not a roofer. I can't tell you what your lifetime warranties are like, but just be careful when your insurance company says, well, wash it and you'll be fine. Another example of why it took 3 more months after that first offer came to us 4 weeks in for us to finally settle with the insurance company. We had bougainvillea and creeping fig and all those vines on our house, very tall walls. They were scorched, as you can imagine, the heat. But all that really bubbled in the paint was a section about 2 feet by 2 feet. So the insurance adjuster in his first pass said, we're really sorry about that. We are going to absolutely repaint that section of your home. So our response, you're telling me that you're going to discolor my property. The other sections of the 4 walls are never going to look the same as this one section 2 by 2 that you're going to repaint. And they said, well, but the other walls weren't damaged. And I said, well, what do you think is going to happen when we take that dead vine off the wall and all of the suctions that plant has rip the plaster? Oh, you're right. We probably have to replaster your whole house, which means repainting your whole house. Their initial offer had no idea that our scaffolding alone, because of our high walls, would cost something like $25,000 or $35,000. Imagine having a property fence that's a wood fence, not uncommon where we all live. We are a dog family. We have dogs. So imagine when your insurance company says there's a service master crew who can clean your house in the next 2 weeks. When can I schedule them? And then you'll be able to move back home. And our response, what are they going to do with all the toxic materials in our backyard? And how are you going to secure my property so I can actually bring my dog home? So these are just very, I would label them innocent things that in our case, our desk adjuster who sits at a desk in Mobile, Alabama, had no idea because she couldn't see our property. The field adjuster who drove out to Wisconsin, and I give him credit for doing the best he could. I'll assume he had maybe 100 homes that he had to deal with, inspecting, documenting in the system, getting reports out that we could then ultimately receive a check for our repairs. But as Monica documented in her What I Wish I Knew post-fire list, what we were offered and what we needed was probably about 20%, I would guess, of what we ended up with. Again, redoing a roof, repainting a whole house, all of those things just were never considered initially. So do your due diligence with your insurance agents. Make sure you know what your coverage is for. Make sure that you are asking those right questions. And one of the biggest challenges we had was simply the cash flow on paying for repairs, because you can imagine insurance companies don't like to release funds before work is performed. They're managing that process closely. Well, contractors can't buy materials or bring in their subs until they have the money. And so this back and forth. For those of you like me who are small business owners, you've probably heard of the Small Business Administration, but you likely never knew the SBA also grants loans to homeowners like us going through catastrophes. And so part of the reason to go to that disaster relief center, you've all heard of FEMA and go apply for your FEMA grant, which by the way, is negligible compared to what your insurance coverage, likely is. And you likely have all heard FEMA is going to reject you the minute you say you have insurance, and someone somewhere in this country may figure out that glitch. They never admitted during Woolsey that was a glitch. They shared that was an absolute. So we never did get FEMA funds, but we qualified for an SBA loan. So my message on this one, you'll get whatever is awarded to you. Please do not accept that. What you're going to go through for the next many months, potentially many years, is so emotionally draining, so financially challenging. please write that hardship letter back to the SBA. You've already paid your taxes on this money. It's not free money. Please don't call it free money. You are taking out a loan with very favorable interest rates being extended to you during your time of need so you can rebuild. We went from a 4% rate to a 2% rate. Imagine if you could refinance your home right now with a 2% HELOC. I have no idea current interest rates where that's at today, but I just offer as an example, you are allowed to ask for help. And in fact, what we would share is you need to ask for help. Now is not the time to be prideful. Now is the time to simply say thank you and be grateful for all the amazing resources out there, whether it's the volunteer stuff, giving you things now, it's the SBA loan that can come to you later. But just recognize these are the things that will get you through these really tough times. I'll share one more thing, and then I'd see some questions already starting to come in. I'll try to get to those. From a record keeping perspective, your insurance companies are going to exhaust you. It is possible if you had a total loss and your carrier writes you a $3 million check because that was your policy limit. It's possible. In fact, it's probably likely for many of you, but that doesn't address your additional living expenses, your ALEs. That doesn't address other things that are going to come up down the road. So as an example, you will likely be living somewhere else for a while, and you will likely be commuting back to your home in the Palisades or Malibu, wherever you might live. That mileage reimbursement is something you're eligible for, but you need to track it. Why would you incur more cost just for paying for gas? For those of you who don't have electric vehicles, or by the way, those of us who do, you know the cost of energy. Going to the drugstore because you need something. Going to restaurants a few more times because you just don't have the energy to cook. There's a whole list of things that go under ALEs, additional living expenses, that you are eligible for. So take advantage of that. But you are going to need to work to get that money, unless you're with a very special carrier I'm unaware of. As an example, we would submit a monthly sort of request to our insurance company for our ALEs. Let's just say it was for $1,000. They would pay us $981.42. And we would ask them about the difference, and they would say they would look into it. And after a few months, we'd get tired of asking, right? So you really want to have things on a separate credit card. You want to keep the Excel spreadsheet. You want to do whatever you do from your own basic household accounting to just be clear. What is the cost of your mileage reimbursement? What is the cost of your animal care? If you're boarding a dog right now, all of those things. I know that our insurance companies come off as being amazing in the beginning when they offer all of us $10,000 right away when we make that first call because they know something bad happened. But moving forward, they became less amazing really quickly. So just be careful and try to keep track of your records as best you can, because you're going to need that detail moving forward. So, all right, I'm looking at a couple of the questions.
If I go ahead and move to some questions.
No, go for it. Yep.
So our first question is from someone whose townhome survived, and they're facing extensive cleanup of the interior, and they're wondering how likely is it that we need to replace furniture and soft goods versus cleaning them. You know, obviously that somewhat depends on the age, the value. The insurance company will take that into consideration. From your experience, were things more replaced or cleaned, and how did that match what you had expected?
Yeah, it's a really good question. For those of you who still have a home standing and your insurance carrier is saying there's a service master crew ready to clean your home, all they are going to do is bring in some air filters and sort of scrub your walls. They are not going to do soft. So you need a second company that does soft, anything with a fabric, not a hard surface. That includes your underwear and your, ties in your closet, or for ladies not wearing ties, potentially other clothing items. It includes your couches, your pillows. My bias, for my experience, this is not founded on any research or based on any insurance code. You do not want to lay in that mattress ever again. You do not want to put your head on that pillow ever again. You want to get rid of all of your sheets, all of your comforters, anything that you are sleeping with. Your clothes. Some of you are able to pack up and evacuate, and you have a duffel bag or a suitcase of clothes. Those are on you to wash. Everything else that you left behind is on the insurance company to wash. So literally everything in my closet, there are people who will come to your home, inventory every single item, We worked with an amazing company. I'm happy to share a name at a later date if people need references to that. It just turned out that one of our good friends' sisters was the manager on our account. And so just having that personal connection, I trust she does that for everybody, but it really just was so comforting to know our items, literally down to socks and underwear, were being cared for in that regard. So as far as the couches, I think it really depends. What's that material? How bad was the experience in your home? Can they bring it offsite and clean it? Possibly, but I think you need to be practical and stand firm with your insurance company. There's no reason you can't say you have health concerns, asthma or allergies. We have people in our home who might have asthma and allergies, even if I don't, as the homeowner. And so I'm not suggesting anyone lies or games the system. I don't think any of us have sort of integrity, sort of flaws, if you will, like that. But be firm that if you are really concerned, not just about your pillow, about your couch, that you just simply say, I'm not willing. They may push back. They may say, let us try, in which case you can say, I have no problem with them taking it offsite and trying. But if it comes back smelling like smoke, then we're going to buy a new one. And we did a lot of that back and forth on things, including the refrigerator. By the way, we were out of power for 14 days in Malibu during Woolsey. I don't know exactly who was out of power during the recent Palisades fire. I know here at this end of Malibu, we were out for several days. So you may be getting rid of an entire refrigerator, not just throwing out what's inside that refrigerator for those of you who still have a structure. And again, all of those things, you can take pictures, you can itemize, wine in a cellar, food in a refrigerator, everything in the pantry. And those are the things that your insurance is meant to cover.
We also have actually two questions about public adjusters and wondering if you used a public adjuster to advocate for yourself or
Yeah.
that's something you'd recommend.
Yeah, I appreciate those questions. This is a really important one. I have clients who litigate against insurance companies. They would say the same exact thing if they were here, whether it's my real life experience or trust advisor. At this moment, it is unlikely any of you know if you need a public adjuster or if you need an attorney to go against your insurance companies. Now, in our case, Edison was likely at fault for Woolsey. We had an attorney for that lawsuit. That is different. When you're talking about your relationship with your insurance company, see what they're offering you. And if you have a total loss and they offer you the policy limits and a check, no questions asked, you don't need a public adjuster. Your public adjuster is going to take 10 or 20% or whatever their fee structure is. You're giving them your own money. For those of you who are in a situation like we were, I call it the best worst case scenario. We're out of our home for a year. Our home was still there, but we couldn't move back until a lot of repair work was done. So best worst case scenario. Those are the people who likely will need some help. In our case, we actually did bring on a public adjuster initially. When they got in and did the drone work and they looked at the extent of our damage, they decided our claim was too small and not worth our being their clients. I think that was out of respect for us, not sort of a selfish business model approach. I think they truly felt we should be able to handle it because there wasn't that much. We then brought in a contractor, which I cannot speak highly enough for having the right contractor by your side. Our contractor, in essence, became our public adjuster. Because you think about my story about the roof, or my story about repainting and replastering the walls, or my stories, I could go on and on about what we had to do. It was the contractor who was doing the work. He was the one who had to be able to sign off at the end of the day, this roof is not compromised. So he knew how to use the insurance systems and their computer programs and enter everything. So we were blessed to have the right contractor. Now he gets his 10% management fee on the total. But again, I don't think he was doing it to run up his fees. He was doing it to take care of us. And if you have that right contractor, you probably don't need a public adjuster. And again, for those of you who are getting the emails, the texts, the flyers in the mail from every attorney in the greater Southern California area, I would offer you don't need them yet. You might need them, but you don't need them yet.
Another question that's been posed is if you have to stop working while you're on all this, are there any subsidies or disability to cover your lost wages? From your experience, was that something that you faced, or something that you have anything to share on?
Yeah, so a couple of things there, and this is a layperson's response, so I'm not, an insurance specialist. So you've got to look at what policies you have, whether you have some kind of a long-term disability policy in place that might have coverage there, whether there's something embedded within your homeowners. I am a small business owner, so I have what you'd expect for, general liability coverage for my business, which is a home-based business. So just depends on your situation, what type of policy you might be able to leverage. Here are the things I would share around disability. Number one, and I'm going to speak very frankly with you. I hope no one is offended by this. I have never taken antidepressants in my life other than the 6 months after the Woolsey fire. I'll be the first to advocate for it. You need to take care of yourself. It is a deeply traumatic and emotional experience that you all are going through. It does not end when the fire ends. You know that. It doesn't end when you repair your home. You will learn that. As I said earlier with folks before you all joined, I mean, if my wife were sitting here right now, she probably would be in tears because of the PTSD and the trauma of the entire experience of dealing with insurance companies and everything. And so if you can demonstrate a true disability, I have to believe those of you with a disability policy can leverage it. I know what my policy covers. I also know what my business continuity coverage is through my business. And so ask your insurance brokers. There are a few things there you probably can leverage, but you need to have the right policy in place. I'm unaware of anything called fire protection for my emotional stress, right? So it's going to be looking in the right place to use that. But I absolutely went through what I will label a level of disability. It was not, completely consuming. I still worked, but my work was very different for 6 to 9 months until we were really in a much, much better place.
One question that I know we've been talking with a lot of people about, and it's true whether someone is displaced for 6 months or a year, or if somebody's looking at several years. What are ways that you and Monica found to make where you were a place of solace, to make that a home when you were out of your home?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And honestly, one of the hardest things for me was not being elsewhere. It was coming back every week to check on the progress of things. For those of you who have not been in your homes that are still standing yet, or maybe haven't been back to your properties yet, every time I came back within 10 minutes, I was sick to my stomach. And I don't think it was just the toxic fumes in my house for 365 days. I think it was the emotional stress and trauma and everything that had happened. So being home, as much as you all want to be home, may not be your first priority. It's to Adam's point of creating a safe place and creating that sort of, escape, if you will, from everything that is the reality you're now dealing with. For Monica and me, we were in 2 different homes. We were in one home for 3 months in Agora. We thought it was good enough, and we just wanted something. Like all of you have been through this in the last couple of weeks. If you've been trying to find that one property that will house you and your children or your family and be close enough to work and schools and just all that you're dealing with, we found a home in Agora. Didn't realize there was no real perimeter fence or backyard for my dogs, which meant every time we took them outside just to use the bathroom, we had to leash them up and walk them. And so there was a lot of challenges in that first home. We were very fortunate and blessed to move into a second home right across from Pepperdine, much closer to where we live. We had an ocean view, which I don't really have for my home. There was a pool in the backyard that we didn't even really use while we were there, but just having it. And so I think wherever you end up, there are ways to make that, special. And whether it's artwork you can bring with you, if you're able to get back in and salvage something, it's candles you put up, it's the music, it's whatever decorations. For us, I mean, I am blessed to have the right partner in my life to go through, horrific events like this. We agreed to eat out more often and not force anyone to cook. You're dealing with insurance claims and, the second job at the end of the full day. So that was part of our reprieve. I mean, we happen to drink wine. I don't know what everyone else's, coping mechanisms are, but for us, a bottle of wine was enough to just sit down and hold each other's hands. And do whatever we needed to do to be together. But a lot of that was really just about being together. One of the things that I think wore on both of us with the entire insurance claim process, you want to get the cash flow for the construction, you want to get the money to cover the ALEs, all that stuff. We just had to accept it was day by day, week by week, and we were only in control of so much. We were not in control of everything. I'm a firm believer in sort of self-health at this point in my life. So whatever you all do, whether it's acupuncture or yoga, or for us, it's walks on the beach when the beach is accessible. But definitely it's important to find that, I'm going to call it an activity. The activity of not watching TV with your mobile phone, scrolling through Facebook, looking at what people are going through. The activity is getting out and moving and being with people, you love and who love you back. And I was talking to Rabbi Bernstein earlier, who went out to dinner with congregants last night, and to just be normal again, to connect socially. I offered to Adam a while ago when this started, when appropriate, now is not timely, but when appropriate, I'd be happy to lead a session around happiness, because I've been on a journey to explore that for the last year and a half. Happiness is, a direction it is moving towards. It's not a destination. We don't ever reach the peak of the mountain on happiness. And one of the things I've really embraced with that is that the number one factor to drive happiness for all of us humans is our relationships. So just please do not go into a cave of your rented home. Please do not abandon your KI community and friends and family to just be depressed. You will be depressed. You will be stressed. You will be anxious. You're going to go through all of that. Allow it to be a part of your experience, but stay connected with the relationships, because that's what's going to create some happiness and some solace through what you all are going through.
You mentioned art earlier. One of the questions we have from the audience is, was your art part of the remediation process, and how did that work?
Yeah, so for us, we did not have, the $100,000, original Picassos that some of you might want to be more mindful of. Our artwork, although quite nice, and if my father is joining us tonight, he'd be very disappointed if I didn't say it's very nice, since much of it is on permanent loan from his collection. But we did not have that level of damage to where we felt a need. I think part of the difference there is, do you have sort of a plexiglass or a covering on your artwork, or is it more open to the environment? Everything that we have in our home that we care about is framed. So we felt it was more protected, and to just have a cleaning crew, clean the frame, we thought was okay. But for those of you who truly are art collectors and have significant pieces, I absolutely would suggest to have someone come in and inspect them, no different than we had an arborist look at every tree on our property and tell us which ones could stay and which ones had to go. Have someone as an appraiser or, a specialist come in. And if you do have that Picasso, you're probably sending it out for professional treatment, and potentially, although it might be impossible for some rare artwork, you might be replacing it. In our case, that just was not, a significant concern.
As just a note for those of you who are just joining us, at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. So if you'd like to ask a question, just go ahead and click that, type it on in, and we'll answer that question. One thing, Jeremy, I know when we communicated shortly after the fire that you shared from your experience was the value of having a separate credit card for, potential insurance reimbursement, and a separate even Google Voice number. Can you talk a little bit about the value of that and how that worked in practice for you and your family?
Sure. My wife handles much of this in our household. So if anyone has further questions, please connect with me through Adam, and be happy to have Monica share additional thoughts. Let's just think about my experience out of my home for one full year. Whether it's the sort of drugstore, groceries, restaurants, the clothing we're buying, all those different expenses, dry cleaning, whatever it could be that we had to pay for as a legitimate additional living expense, the dog boarding, all of that. For those of you who have multiple credit cards in your family, One partner uses the Visa, one partner uses the Amex. Some of you have home-based businesses like mine, so you have the corporate credit card, different than the personal. Imagine what your record keeping is going to look like throughout that year. Every time you try to look for the receipts that you don't want to keep because it's too many pieces of paper, you're just trying to get to the insurance company proof of an expense that is a legitimate expense that you are owed back through your policy. If you have one dedicated credit card, and for those of you who are, a dual person couple in a household, just get two tied to the same account, because it is much easier to hand that over to an insurance company. There's no dispute. There's no mixing and matching of, was that, legitimate? Was that not actually an ALE? That was just, we went out to dinner or whatever it might be. So that's the value in the single credit card that's dedicated to this purpose. By the way, you're also going to have expenses like postal mailbox, for example, or other things that are temporary. For those of you who maybe lost cars, phones, whatever, items that you're going to need to replace short term, they're not part of a rebuild. If you can keep all of those expenses in one place, it'll just be much, much easier to manage the process with your insurance company. As far as the phone number, so you likely are going to talk to a few different contractors. You're likely going to go to a few different events that attorneys or public adjusters are hosting. They're going to want your contact information because, of course, they're going to follow up with you and solicit your business later. Arguably, for the best of intentions, but still exhausting. I don't have a Google number. My wife does. So that means I'm giving them my direct mobile phone. They're going to call me and text me and arguably harass me if I choose the other attorney or the other contractor until we get to the point where we no longer want to work with them. Even just the cleaning crews that are coming to your home, you're probably going to talk to two, maybe three at a minimum before you select whoever you feel is the best fit based on price, availability, just integrity and trust. So rather than having everybody contact you on your direct mobile phone, and now you're taking phone calls all day long while you're trying to focus on work, while you're with your kids, whatever it might be, use a separate phone number. With the technology that's available today, there's no reason why you can't just get a new phone number immediately. It will direct back to you at whatever your preferred number might be, but at least then you'll know you're screening your calls. It's not an unrecognized number. You know it's related to fire. And by the way, I'd offer make sure that you use something like that with your insurance company as well, because you don't want to be taking the call from your insurance company while you're, driving the kids to school or back home or those kinds of things. You want to be in the right place for those phone calls that are going to come as long as you are going through the claim process.
And did you keep your ALE, dwelling and personal property, on one card, or did you separate those out, or how did you organize that? That's what a question we've received.
Yep. So if you read the I wish I knew list and you saw the credit card, that is one of those things we did not do. And between Monica and myself, best of intentions, but you're emotionally stressed and you are physically exhausted, we didn't organize that as well as we could have. I'm confident our insurance company made at least a few thousand, if not several $1,000s by our not being as meticulous as we could be. We used the Amex, we used the Visa, we used whatever card was on hand whenever we ended up with whatever expense. So we did not do that following our own direction, which is part of where that recommendation comes from today. But we did a very good job with a spreadsheet on ALEs tracking mileage reimbursement and some expenses. So where we maybe failed on the credit card part, we hopefully made up for most of that on the Excel spreadsheet and kind of tracking those expenses that way.
Another question we've got, which I think is front of mind for a lot of people too. Did most of your community rebuild, and how does it feel being there today? When you returned, how long, did it take for you before it felt okay or like home, after the experience that you had?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And again, for those of you who still have a structure to go back to and you're thinking maybe you'll be home in 3 months, please be thinking 6 to 9. It'll just be healthier, and anything ahead of that is a bonus, right? It puts a smile on your face. But we were definitely not the first ones back in our community. Our home at the bottom of our cul-de-sac had the worst damage of any of the homes here. So we had neighbors who were back months before us. I could ask them what it felt like. For us, it was tough. And being out of our home for 12 months, even a month, 2 months before we were ready to come back home and it looked like we would be able to move back, my wife and I were looking at property in Sunset Mesa. I was not sure I ever wanted to live at this end of Malibu again, not because I was afraid of another fire, which, by the way, I've probably been evacuated 10 times since then. I just couldn't deal with the emotional stress of driving through Keenan or along Pacific Coast Highway, looking at the burns. When we got home, again, we were only out 12 months. Imagine the home for the total loss. There are a few that still have not rebuilt. Almost everybody has rebuilt. There's one in particular up our street that's a really sad story. I'm sure they bought the home in the 70s. I'm sure it was completely paid off. I'm sure they did not have insurance because there was no mortgage requiring it. They don't have the funds to rebuild. And they've moved in with neighbors across the street and are staying in a guest house, but it's tragic. I walk past their home almost every day walking my dog, and I see the remnants of a pool and I see the remnants of some burned trees. So it's present in our lives every day. I think when we came back home November of 2019, it probably took through that entire holiday season until we had some rain sort of heading into the spring that brought back some green and some flowers in the canyons. And then there's sort of that part of the beauty of sort of the rebirth, if you will, of the nature around us. Granted, I was just driving through Las Virgenes the other day, visiting my mom who lives on the other side of the hill in Calabasas. It is devastating to me to see what happened just from the Franklin fire, and that doesn't even pale in comparison to what happened with the Palisades fire. And so those of us who live in these areas, I still have some PTSD. I still have an emotional effect of driving through the canyons and seeing the burn. There's a tree technically on Caltrans property at the bottom of Keenan Road behind my property line. I don't know who's ever going to take it down. I assume nobody, but it's burned and it looks like it's dead and it looks like it shouldn't be there. And so it's present in my life even to this day. I wouldn't say it's debilitating. As I said, I only took antidepressants for 6 months. I'm not taking them 6 years later. But for all those of you who are wondering what's it like going back, it's tough for a while, and you need to find your own peace with returning home. And there are plenty in our community who never did. They got the architectural designs and they sold their properties and they live in different areas now. And for those of you with little kids who can't go to Marquez anymore for quite a while, and you've moved out of the area to get into different school systems, I think there are families who may not come back, which is so sad to say for the communities I grew up in. But for those who are able to get back sooner, just know it's going to be with a heavy heart for sure.
One of the questions we've got from our attendees, from someone whose home is standing, but they're obviously displaced in temporary housing,
Yeah.
was about cleaning things like computers, printers, sort of critical items that they may have been able to recover from the home. And so from your experience, were there things that you were able to recover while you were in, another place? And how did you handle those?
Yeah, so I'm seeing a couple of things there. There's some soft with clothes and dresser and closet, some more what I'll call hard, sort of, different items. We moved over the hill into Agora. We came back to the house after the evacuation period was over and we grabbed some more clothes. That we washed or we took to the dry cleaners. And by the way, we sent that bill in with our ALEs. For the stuff that we did not take, because we did not pack our entire home and move our entire home of clothing, literally every single item that we left behind in a dresser or in a closet was washed offsite and was returned to us. So for those of you who are saying it was only a few days or I don't want to be a burden, please don't do that to yourself. You are not guilty of being selfish. There's no reason why somebody cannot wash your underwear and your socks or your jeans and your t-shirts, charge your insurance company $1 or $5, whatever the cost is. That's why you're insured. That's not part of your additional living expense, which is a limited amount of money you'll get. It's not part of your green for replacing your grass or your bushes. It is literally an item in your insurance policy. And if you have not talked to your insurance advisors yet, ask them. Look at the entire breakdown. What is structural? What is the soft? What is the green? And all of those different classifications and categories have a value under your policy. So absolutely get anything you left behind you're going to wear again washed, because that's what your insurance will do for you. As far as the hard materials, because we were not able to come back home for a while, I was able to buy a new printer for my business, and I used that in our rental homes for the year. When I came back, I was under obligation from the insurance company to basically donate that printer. I would have kept that printer, but my old printer actually seemed to work just fine. And yes, we had a professional cleaner come and sort of clean, the printer, but that's a nominal effort for someone to do. It seemed fully functional, so I was not going to throw that out or reject it, and I sure was not going to keep what was meant to be my temporary printer. I would have sent it wherever they wanted it, but they decided it was cheaper for me to donate it than for me to ship it back to the insurance company, because they don't want to be the owners of used printers. For other items that are in your home, we talked artwork earlier, but desk chairs and furniture that's hard, usually your cleaning crews will do just fine with that stuff. For computers, if you've left them indefinitely, you definitely want to have them looked at by somebody. If they seem fine and you can use some, pressurized air to clean it off and it's functional, I'm not a technologist. I would say fine is fine. Your IT support is likely going to want to take a keyboard off, look at the internal, and see is there ash on the inside. We never did that. When we evacuated, we were able to take our computers with. So we never had hardware left behind other than like my monitor. And for monitors, they didn't seem to be nearly as sensitive as the computer themselves. So hope that helps.
In your experience, one of the questions we've received is about replacing carpet, drywall, HVAC. Is that something that you did replace? And is that something that you anticipated replacing from the beginning, or did that sort of come up as you went through the process?
Some of that stuff comes up. Some of that stuff, the insurance company will say, we're going to clean it and you'll be fine. Some of that, again, going back to what I shared earlier, you're allowed to say you have allergies or asthma, that you're concerned about your health. What you all are going through with the Palisades fire, excuse me, the level of toxins today in that environment versus what we had with Woolsey 6 years ago. I mean, just the number of Tesla batteries that we have in our homes now for solar systems or for electric vehicles. It's a completely different environment. So my bias, which is only my bias, you've got to filter through your own lens of what you think is reasonable. Get rid of everything that is exposed. So what we ended up doing is we did not replace all the drywall in our house. We had them clean and repaint everything. Your insurance company will likely say you don't need to repaint your interior. It'll be fine when they clean it. We rejected that as even a consideration. We said you are absolutely repainting the entire house, and we were able to get that win. It may take some back and forth. It may take pictures. That's where you may end up with the public adjuster, or in our case, our contractor, because you're not looking at a policy limit payout for total loss. You're looking at, what's within reason. But at the end of the day, your home should be like for like. You should not be living in the uncertainty of, do you have toxins in your home? So be bold about those things. Someone asked about HVAC. We did not replace our HVAC. We had people come in and clean and renew filters and all that kind of stuff. But we were not of the opinion, given where our home sits and how the fire moved through our property, that our HVAC was compromised beyond filters and such. I would never want to suggest someone who lives in the Highlands who still has a home, different type of a fire situation, you might need to replace HVAC, but we did not have to go to that extreme. It was more of a filter and service, sort of clean the machine, no different than my printer for us.
So I just want to jump in here and speak for those of us who have lost everything, and say it's so helpful, Jeremy, everything you've said about, remediation and all of the ways people should be considering what's salvageable and what's not, and what insurance receipts you should keep so that you can, get reimbursed. For some of us, there's a limit of what, being displaced is going to pay us. I don't have to keep receipts for that. There's a limit on what my contents were in the house, I don't need to keep receipts about that. They've already evaluated that I had way more that I lost than what the insurance company is going to pay me. They don't need receipts. So I think there's a big difference here between people who have a structure standing and have different kinds of insurance, agreements about, you incurred this cost and then we'll reimburse you for a total loss. For some of us, it's like there's no, I don't need receipts. It's gone. And if you can prove by pictures and videos and whatever that you had all of this stuff and it's gone, you don't need receipts. No mileage receipts for me are going to help. No receipts about, where I stayed is going to help. There's a cap on what I will get, and it's going to take at least 3 years before I'm in a house. So I don't need to keep receipts about a hotel room because I'm going to be out of pocket for 3 years paying rent somewhere. So I think that's important too, is that we have this huge like difference between those of us who are completely without anything left, and we will only get what our insurance company will cover. And then all the amazing things that you're talking about that people who need remediation and have to save their receipts for. So I just want to say to the people out there who have a total loss, this is it's another category.
Yeah.
Like we get what we get, and they don't need receipts. They don't track mileage because it doesn't matter. There's a cap and we've reached the cap. So we're going to get the cap if we have the right people working with us. They're going to get the cap, and that's all we get. Doesn't matter what we spend, we get what we get to be reimbursed. So that's the good, the bad, and the ugly of that.
No, thank you for sharing that. That's absolutely true for those who have a total loss. And so my only message to that would be find out that number immediately.
Yeah.
The home that you're in right now, you may choose to be in that entire 3 years if you're rebuilding for 3 years, or you may recognize you can stretch your dollar a little bit further by being in a different type of a home. Our insurance company did not tell us the fair market value of our home when we had to go get something. They weren't even ready for us to commit to a lease for our first 3 months because they were still trying to get us back in our home in 2 weeks. So the
Right.
first home we rented was something like $10,000. Fair market value of our home was north of 20, but I didn't know that. I was completely ignorant to what rental, values would be. What you're going through right now to secure a home is even worse given the scarcity. So
Right.
somebody may have a fair market value of $25,000, let's say, but you may choose to be in a home that's only a fair market value of 15 because you know that you can stretch that extra $10,000
But
further.
for us, it doesn't matter. There's a cap.
No, I'm saying, but I understand the cap, but the cap is the cap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But
So
by the way, to your
decide,
point,
like,
there's
here's your
also
cap.
time-
Like, how long do you think it's going to take
Right.
to rebuild? If you want to rebuild,
Yeah.
to relocate, if you want to relocate. So, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
so just, anyway.
My only point is what people will see if you research this on the internet, don't be staying at the Four Seasons because you think your insurance company is paying for it.
right.
Be mindful of how far that dollar is going to stretch because you absolutely will hit a threshold
And
if you're
because
gone
it's
2
going
to
to
3
take
years.
longer than we think to get
Right.
someplace, like where we can be settled and not have to pay our mortgage and rent.
Right.
Jeremy, I want to ask you, I know you are so resilient. You are so amazing. Like you said about committing to a different way of doing some things after this experience. And could you just share with us a little bit about how are the ways that we can be taking care of ourselves and looking forward? You're 6 years out. Like, how can we get to where you are 6 years out, better than you were before in terms of like the trauma didn't wreck you because you made certain choices?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, my immediate thought is the, adage of what does not kill us makes us stronger, right? I mean, that's not nearly the answer you want to hear. It was a traumatic experience for us on a different scale than for all of you, what you're going through. It was absolutely gut-wrenching for much of it. As I said, anytime I came back to my home within 10 minutes, I was sick to my stomach just having to experience the environment, driving through Pacific Coast Highway or Keenan Road and seeing the burn and all that. having your people are your loved ones, your family, your friends, your KI community, I think makes a huge, huge difference because no one is in this alone. We were not in it alone. We got to go sort of have a drink with our neighbors. Even if we were not living at home, we would go somewhere else. You all have that ability to sort of have friends to lean on. I think part of it was just recognizing this is a time to let people help. I was joking earlier with Rabbi Bernstein, I've learned not to ask, how are you? Right? We know, like it sucks. And that doesn't even come close to describing how it really is. So find another question. Ask, what is something amazing that's gone on in your life this past week? I guarantee there's been something that's put a smile on your face or made you laugh. And it was maybe few and far between, but just look for those gems. For me, I am now a huge advocate for Michael Franti. If you don't know his music, find his music because it's just happy music. And by the way, there are some amazing Israeli reggae artists I never knew existed that they just make me happy. I hear songs, and yes, it makes me cry, but it's crying joy, not the sadness. So whatever those, I won't call them coping mechanisms, but strategies are for you, find them and embrace them. It may require antidepressants for a little while. Make that okay for yourself. It may require sleeping aids. Make that okay for yourself. This is not a time to judge for being weak or less than or not good enough. This is unfathomable what everyone is going through. And yes, there's happiness on the other side, but it just takes, rolling with the punches of the insurance company or the contractors or the fact that I still can't drive PCH to get to LAX or whatever these things are that happen in life. We're alive, we're safe. And someone asked about photo albums earlier. We were truly blessed. Again, the best of worst case scenarios. I did not lose a baby picture in my experience. Some of you are crying now that I say that. I get it. And I am so sorry for what you are experiencing. Ours was not on that scale or level. And still, I'm confident you all can find that one thing that brings happiness and joy to your life, which is a friendship, a connection, a bottle of wine, an extra cookie is okay every night for a while, whatever that may be, for sure. You're smiling. Hopefully that helps.
Well, we've got a lot of great questions, and we're running a little short on time. So one more question, and then we'll close it down for the evening. As a note, this session is being recorded. So if there's something useful in here that you go, what was that he said, or what was that piece of information? It's available on our website. Or if you want to share it with anybody, that's also totally possible as well. For our final question, did you do environmental testing and work at all with a remediation company along with your contractor?
Do you want to announce?
So environmental testing is something that our public adjuster originally was talking about doing as they bring in every specialist in the world. We ended up not having to do that because we were doing so much remediation to the backyard and all the landscape, that was destroyed because of the different cleaning services we had in-house for both soft and hard materials. We basically knew what the environment was. And we did not come back for 12 months. We had neighbors who came back very quickly. I would offer maybe not the smartest for their health and not necessary if they wanted to negotiate harder with their insurance companies to replace a roof or replace trees and things. But some people wanted to prioritize being home. And I don't mean that critically. That was their driving factor. For us, it was not going home until our home was ready for us. So all of those specialists are beneficial. If you find you're struggling with your insurance company, that's where your public adjusters help. That's where going to the arborist and those other, types of specialists helps. Some of us needed that and some of us did not in our own different experiences.
I can't thank you enough, Jeremy, for giving us this time and expertise and your experience. I just can't. And like you've made it very clear that what we need is community. We need to be together. We need to lean on friends. We need to lean on family. We need to lean on each other. And of course, you're preaching to the choir on that one. So to that end, I want to remind everybody that we are now at the Caton Children's Theater at Santa Monica Place. And it's very easy to park there. It's very easy to get to the Caton Children's Theater. museum. And like there are big signs as soon as you pull into either structure 7 or structure 8. There's big signs to tell you where to park. And it's very easy. And you go in there 5:30. We're open for families because it is a children's museum. And so families can come in there with safe air quality and they can play, kids can play. And 6:15, we're going to have kind of blessings for the tots and the little kids and their families. 7 p.m. is our usual Friday night service at the Caton Museum. And so please spread the word that we have a place that we're hoping will actually work for a while. We're hoping this will work for a long time. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But we really hope this is going to be a place we can be together. We can have both kids and families with, older kids and all of us who go to the 7 o'clock service usually, like we're hoping actually this will be an opportunity for more overlap on Friday night for all of our KI community. So please remember Caton at Santa Monica Place. We are so grateful, Jeremy, for your expertise and your time, and we will hopefully see you in person at Caton, and we're there through February and like hopefully beyond, but we hope to see you there, or we could go out to dinner with your dad. That would be
love that. And please, we didn't share my contact information with anyone, but if we didn't get to your question, send it through Rabbi Bernstein or Adam. We'll get it answered. If you want to follow up for a few minutes and chat, my experience is not your experience. I do not want to pretend that I have all the answers for what you are going through, but if I can help, please let me. KI has been part of my life for longer than I've been alive. If you ask my parents that. So if there's anything that I can do, please feel free to just send a note, and wishing you all the best for what the weeks, months, potentially years ahead look like for you all.
Thank you, Jeremy. We love you.
Thank you so much. Love you all too. All right. Have a wonderful night.
You too.
Bye.